When I first got the text from my friend Anthony, I thought it was some kind of joke because it showed his beautiful, brand new luxury STR. And then it was a screen of a building on fire. And I mean, totally on fire, like in TV Inferno. The worst part, there were people inside the building. That's not where the story ends. That's where the story begins. And that's why I want you to meet my friend Anthony Guerra, because he is the epitome of taking what could have been disaster and turning it into something that's super awesome. Please join us for a special Real Estate Pessimist podcast where we talk to my personal friend, Anthony Guerra. Please join Kristi Candle and me on the next one.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm Kristi Candle, one of your co-hosts. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to be developers in their own community. And I'm joined by my co-host, Erik Stimbakken. How's it going?
It's going great, joining you from Colorado. The snow has just started to melt. It was, I think, 10 degrees this morning. It is a great time to have a sauna, but that is not the topic today. The topic is Anthony Guerra, my friend and podmate. And you may be wondering, what is a podmate? Maybe we'll get into that later, but he's been a friend for years, and we can't wait to get into his story. As we do, Anthony, how are things? What's your temp this morning down in Georgia?
Well, it's actually kind of chilly down here. Hi, guys. Welcome. I appreciate you guys having me on. And yeah, it's pretty chilly down here. It's just got cold finally.
Like chilly, what does that mean in Georgia?
Well, here it's mid 40s right now. This morning when I went out to go work out, it was 30 degrees. So it's pretty cold for here.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that. Well, Anthony and I have been connected, started out through the Better Life Tribe, and we ended up in an accountability group. And we meet every week, unless one of us is out of country or something like really out. And we have been friends and mentors to each other and peers. And it's been really great. We get to connect and set goals together and so on. But there's a lot about Anthony I don't know. And so I'm looking forward to this. One of the first things I remember hearing about Anthony, since this is about real estate, was Section 8. And Anthony, I got to tell you, when I first heard you say that, I was thinking, I had a friend of mine who told me all of the typical horror stories and maybe more. And so when you said you did it and you were still doing it, I was like, wait a minute, maybe I have a lot to learn. So kind of take us into what you're doing, what that part of it looks like. Then we'll transition into your newest adventures.
Well, so that's how I got into real estate initially. We partnered up with an operator who back in 2016. And between 2016 and 2018, we bought about 35 properties here in the Atlanta area. And we had a partner who was the operator. So we did the financing, he did the operations. And yes, so that was my first introduction. I still had I was a restaurateur, so I was working on, full-time doing, hospitality business, working in restaurants, and then investing on the side with our operator. Around 2020, during the pandemic, we had kind of sold our two interests in restaurants. We were going to do a new concept, my wife and I, and we were solely going to, we were going to have no investors. It was just going to be us. And so we got out of the restaurants that we had interest in December of 19, and started putting our business plan together for our new breakfast concept here in Atlanta. And then the pandemic happened. So obviously, it was rough going for everybody in that industry. I'm sure everywhere, but particularly here in Atlanta. And it gave me time. It was a real kind of monumental moment for me where we had already been involved in real estate. Where I was focused on kind of the financial piece of it, and then the whole operational piece was left to our partner. During that downtime, a couple things happened. I got to dive deeper into the business, look at how our operations were being run, participate in codifying systems with the operation that weren't being done, just with my background in business operations. The other piece, and the more profound piece for me, was I was home and I got to take my kids to school. I got to have dinner with them. And it really made me stop and think, what am I doing? I'm gone 80, 90 hours a week. And there's this business that we have that's just built up around us that has so much potential to grow. If I focus my energy there, a couple things happen. We can really grow that part of our life and have long-term security and success. And the more important piece was that I get to be really engaged with my family in a way that I had never been my whole life. I worked, my wife stayed home, took care of our kids. And it was something that was a real aha moment for me, actually. And so from then on, we took that capital that we had for the restaurant and we just started putting it back in real estate. I mean, that was like the return on investment, emotionally, spiritually, financially, family wise, was so profound that it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. So as you started into this, how did you get into Section 8? I mean, just like, I get it that some people like, well, I moved, and so we're just going to rent our past house and we're going to do that. That's a pretty natural thing. You can kind of almost fall into it. And Kristi and I have told our origin stories about this. What was it that got you into it in the first place? And why the Section 8 market?
Well, okay, so at the time, again, this was driven by our partner who really just had a concept. And there was an opportunity in the market where the entry into homes here was low. You know, we were getting properties really inexpensively. We were renovating them. And then there was a lack of properties in the Section 8 program in Atlanta. So really, like, part of it was luck and part of it was just, there was a niche that needed to be filled and our partner identified that. And so this, he didn't have the capital, we had the capital, so we were able to be really aggressive. And at the time, like I said, it was so easy to rent Section 8 properties in Atlanta because there was just such a shortage. So our occupancy, I mean, immediately, it's like we never had a month where we didn't have full occupancy. If we had a turnover, on occasion, we would have turnover, but I mean, it was filled the next month.
So how did that work during the pandemic then? I mean, one of the things that I hear people say about Section 8 is like, well, the government is your client then, and you don't want that. And during a COVID, it's like, well, people are just not going to pay rent. How did that actually play out?
That definitely wasn't like being in partnership with the government during the pandemic was actually the best thing that ever could happen to our business. I mean, honestly, because we had a lot of friends locally that had multiple rental properties. A lot of people stopped paying rent and they had to sell off some of their portfolio just to survive. We, on the other hand, any portion of rent that the tenants had to pay, they just had to fill out we helped them fill out forms where the housing authority paid 100% of the rent the entire time. And so on the first of the month, we got full payments for all of our properties every first. There was no insecurity about not getting our rent payments.
Now,
that really helped us out.
Which that's incredible. And, pandemic and all. What about just in general? Because I know when we were first looking into some properties, we were looking into LA County in California, because that was where the numbers made sense that you could buy property and also get enough Section 8 dollars to make it make sense. And then some in Ohio too. But we were cautioned from an operational standpoint that there's more nuance to it and it might not be worth the operational hassle. How did you guys navigate that part? Did you hire partners to do the management? Did you self-manage? And did you see those horror stories, or were that just people talking about the 2 a.m. toy? Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Kristi Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. And now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer podcast on all platforms.
I think we did not have those kind of problems, quite honestly. I think housing authorities in different municipalities run much differently. We were there, in Georgia, in Atlanta in particular, there's surrounding housing authorities that are a little bit more challenging to work with. But at the time that we got it, the housing authority in Atlanta was pro-owner, right? Because they had such a shortage. So we could negotiate. For instance, we bought 10 duplexes on this block, and part of the housing authority's restrictions are you can only have a certain amount of people in the program for the units, but they were really low on one bedrooms, and these were all one bedrooms. So we were easily able to go in there and negotiate, hey, we're going to buy these properties only if you give us contracts for all of the properties. And they're like, sure, no problem. We need one bedrooms. So again, it was timing. The climate's changed a bit. The market for Section 8 in Atlanta has gotten very competitive. It's much harder to, it's much more of a renter's market now than it was back then. It was an owner's market and we filled them all up and it was super easy, and that's changed. So, a lot of it was luck, a lot of it was timing. Some of that stuff is I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And I always thought that's the way it was going to be. And as the climate's changed over the years, that was one of the reasons we kind of split up with our partner, because it just didn't identify the changing climate and pivot and make business decisions around what's actually happening now, and not what, versus what was happening 5 years ago.
That's such a big and important point, is that we can hear stories about things like, oh, it's just horrible. Every Airbnb is terrible. Now, I got a friend of mine who stayed is out of state somewhere, and he showed me pictures on the internet that someone had literally, right before they got there, kicked in the door. Like the door frame is broken and the doors he took pictures and he's like, we can't stay here. Like, you can't even latch the security latch. And so people hear that and like, oh, all Airbnbs must be terrible. I saw it in the comments. Well, I'm here to tell you, not all of them. Right. And I remember hearing Section 8. Oh, Section 8 is so horrible. And the stories I heard, they were pretty horrible. But that's not all of them. Also, you could hear something about whether it's Section 8 or STRs or single family homes or multifamily, and we could say, that's got to be terrible. Well, that might have been 3 years ago, or it might have been awesome 3 years ago, and now it's not. To your story, this is like things change. And I know that you did not stay exclusively in Section 8, which is the lead up to a little bit of foreshadowing here about your shift into a new asset class. Tell us about what inspired that. Where did you go? What did you do?
So after the pandemic happened, we started getting much more involved in operations. This is where the downside of that asset class kind of kicks in. And it's not necessarily the asset class itself, it's the way we were operating as operators. Like I said, we had an operator, a partner, and it was easy to rent out those properties at the time because there was a housing shortage. And quite frankly, our operator took advantage of that niche and didn't take care of the properties the way that we would hope that he would. Provide affordable, nice housing for people. I wouldn't call him a slumlord, but I would not say he was far off from it. And the bottom line was cash flow. For us, the business was bigger than cash flow. There's appreciation, there's quality of life for the tenants that we have. Those are all considerations that we honestly for a long time kept our head in the sand about and didn't look at it. We just got our disbursements each month and we're like, well, look at how great this business is doing, and didn't go farther. When the pandemic happened, we had an opportunity to start looking into that business. We started recognizing those things and questioning ourselves, like, is this the kind of business we want to be in?
Right.
And so the answer was no. We didn't want to be slumlords. It wasn't all about just cash flow. These were assets that were appreciating in that particular area in a really robust way. So even not being the best operators at the time, we were still making great money. So we had to really look at ourselves and like, hey, why are we doing this? And so at that point, we decided to part ways with our partner. And then we ended up taking the entire year's revenue and reinvesting it in all those properties to get them up to a place where they were livable. Like every last penny that we had, we put into it. And Erik, I think you were around for that period of time. I think you remember that, and it was the best thing that we did, because at the end of the day, I want to be able to sleep well at night, knowing that our tenants were living the way they were living. I was not sleeping well.
Right. So there's this epiphanies, and
So
you redeveloped.
It was obvious to me that real estate investing was the route to go. Right? Now, there was a couple of modifications on how we ran our business and what we wanted to do. And so at that point, once we kind of stabilized that portfolio, I said, it's time to diversify in our asset classes. I had a hospitality background. I'd been an operator and an owner of restaurants for 25 plus years. And so having short-term rentals was a natural progression for me. It just I can do this. We had a farm up in Dahlonega. And so I said, and we weren't using, our kids had grown up and now they're middle schoolers and high schoolers and they don't want to go out to the farm on the weekends. They want to hang out with their friends. And so now we have this property, this beautiful property, by the way, that's just sitting up there and in Dahlonega, creeks running underneath the house and streams through the property and horses running around. It was so it's like, well, we have a great property. Let's dip our toe into this asset class and see how we like it. Like the point of entry is pretty low for us because we already own it. And, let's see where this goes.
How'd it go?
Well, it went well. I loved it. I really loved it. I was like, okay, I loved designing it. I loved, the hospitality component of it. I loved the feedback people, like we were creating memories. And for me, that's a lot of, the mantra I had with why I love the hospitality and restaurant business in particular, because we were creating times where people got together and had experiences, and we were able to do that on a larger scale. And then the feedback we were getting from our guests, and it was just like every time I got one of those reviews where it was just like, our family has had the best, it just warmed my heart so much that I was like, this is the niche that I'm passionate about in real estate.
Right. And I'm guessing, well, actually, I know what happens next, because all of us who invested in real estate who have had that kind of experience do the same thing. Like, I don't know anybody that has just one really well running property. If that's happening, you get another one. You're like, okay, I got to do this again, which is what I know happened.
Yeah. I mean, when we started off, so I learned a lot out of that first property. It wasn't the most profitable property as far as monetary profit. I didn't make any money on it. Actually, I think I broke even on it, but I learned everything that I needed to learn to move forward. The first thing I recognized is that, oh, I've got to, I've got to supercharge my knowledge about this asset class.
Yeah, go into that. So what did you do to do that?
Well, I joined a short-term rental mastermind group called Odyssey. And so I learned a lot, and I immersed myself in all the classes and the network and all the people in the resources, and really got to learn about how to run an STR professionally. I was running my STR like it was 2019, and I know you guys were probably doing that back then. It was a different,
Oh yeah,
pictures
absolutely.
with my iPhone. There wasn't a cohesive design, but it was so charming that we got away with it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I was like, and then on top of it, I spent about 9 months renovating it myself, which was actually the most important lesson that I learned, because after we started making money, I realized that 9 months down, the amount of money I saved actually lost money in sales that I could have generated. So that was
Question, why did you think that you needed to do the work yourself?
well,
Or were you just bored?
I wanted to save a little money. I thought I wanted to save a little money, and I would do it myself. Because again, remember, I didn't know if I wanted to be in this asset class. So I was just kind of like, okay, we're going to go in as low entry as possible, see if I like it, and then go from there. And so I think what happened was, very quickly I realized I liked it. And I realized how much money I left on the table by doing the work myself. I was painting, spending, and I would go up there every weekend. And, it took me 9 months to get this thing going. Just a reference point, I did a luxury listing from close to being listed. The last one that I did took me 8 weeks. And this is professionally designed, set up, photographs. I mean, professional photographs, not iPhones that I took over a series of like 6 months, haphazardly put it together, the listing together. It's amazing. In the short period of time, the 2 years between my first one and my, third one, where I just, there's just like this evolution that's happened that's been really powerful, really powerful.
Right. And that wasn't I know this, that wasn't a 1 bedroom, just on the end of a condo where that you like, put new paint on. That's not the kind of renovation he's talking about. That's not the kind of property he's talking about. But let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about the first STR that you bought on purpose to be an STR. And you're like, I'm going in on this thing. You took your Vodacy courses. You're like, I'm going to do this professional. I'm not going to do all DIY. And so how did that process hold and take us to how that felt when you sent me the pictures of that listing? Because I remember getting them and flipping through that. Mind blown, absolutely mind blown. Because I've been in it for years, and I saw yours. I was like, holy cow, this guy has picked up speed. So tell us about that process of getting that first intentional STR going.
So from the time that I made the decision that we're going to grow this asset class, immerse myself in my education, and then I had a buy box. I wanted to stay in Dahlonega. I had a team of operators there. I wanted to get my operational chops mastered. So I said, I'm going to stay here. I already have a great cleaning crew. I have a great handyman. It gave me, and I was an hour away. I said, okay, I'm going to buy another one in Dahlonega. Well, at that point, I decided to stand out in the market. I wanted to make sure I knew I was going to design it well. I knew I was going to market it well with great photographs, for at least versus the last one that I did. But the one piece that was really critical for me was making sure that I found an amenity, a natural amenity in that market that was unique. And so it took me a year to find one. but I finally found one. It was one of 3 properties in the entire market that had a perfect west-facing view. So you got these perfect sunsets. You saw the pictures. You got these perfect sunsets, and it was just, that classic, mountain log cabin kind of a property. But it had this west-facing sunset view that nobody else had.
And I can say from the pictures that he sent me, the design of this thing, it just said, this is going to be really nice. And my first question wasn't, would I like it? It was like, could I afford it as a guest? Right. And there's a lot of Airbnbs, and I don't want to emphasize this because a lot of folks, Airbnb had their roots. They started their roots in basically couch flipping. Right. And this is really important. It's like somebody's got an apartment and they've got an extra couch and they just want to get an extra $20, $30 and have somebody stay in their couch. Or then like, oh, maybe I got an extra bedroom. I got a 2-2, but I've got an extra bedroom. So why not rent that out? And that's Airbnb's roots. And that's really important as their story, right? So in your mind, you might be thinking like, okay, so this is probably like a spare bedroom where somebody's got, grandma's curtains. No. This thing is all in, 100% purpose built for hospitality, high-end guests. Okay, so picture a full-size, large cabin, and tell us about some of the amenities that were on this thing that you put into this. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, they were unique amenities, especially for that market. I think we were one of the first people in that market to put in a sauna. So I had a sauna. I had a whole wellness deck. So we had a sunset deck, and then we had a wellness deck. And on the lower wellness deck, it was a sauna, cold plunge, hot tub, game rooms, the whole thing. But it was unique to that market. With the design, you have a cohesive design. We're creating a cohesive design. We're having amenities that overcompete in the market, and we're marketing it really effectively. Now, that's all what I learned in the short period of time versus the first one where it was just like, here you go. It was the same furniture that we had. I put up a couple pictures and took, rearranged. He got a couple of pillows and rolled it out. And the second one was, I got a professional design team. We came up with cohesive design. Every detail was thought out.
And it showed. And it was, how did it perform as you got this thing listed? Slow to take off? What happened?
No, it came out, it did well right out of the gate. So we only had it operating for, I think 4 months before it burnt down. I don't know if we got to that part yet.
Well, spoiler alert. Yeah, tell us about that phone call.
It was trending to do about 150,000. I had projected on the high end to do about 104,000 on the property. So that was first year.
So you're killing it. It's
so
going.
And it was, we had just kind of optimized the pricing. So now we were really raising the prices and really, the occupancy was blowing out the occupancy in the market by, twice as much. I mean, we were, those last 3 months going into the holidays, I think we were at 85 to 90% occupancy going into the holidays. So it was crushing it. It was going to do really, really well.
And then the phone call and a text photo. Tell us about that. Because, this is the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. Anybody who's listening knows there's going to be more.
Well, so we're riding along. It's going strong. I put my heart and soul into this. I was so proud of it. And I get a call at 6:30 in the morning from one of the neighbors, your house is on fire. And but there's people in the house. That was my first, because I had guests that were staying there and they weren't supposed to check out till that morning. And I said, oh my gosh, there's people in the house right now. And he said, the entire house is in flames. So
I saw the picture, folks. I saw that, but this isn't like, oh, there's a kitchen fire. No, this is like a Hollywood scale freaking inferno kind of looking fire.
So that was my first thought was, oh my gosh, we have guests in there. And so I called the guests right away and they answered the phone. It's like, oh no, we checked out the night before. I said, okay, good. Because the house is on fire and it's burning down right now. And So, I mean, I don't even, it's still kind of, that just recalling that morning was this, when you have a kind of tragedy like that, you're just numb. And so I rushed up there. I was there. I mean, the house was already like toast all the way down to the ground. There's nothing left over. But immediately I got into, I'm driving there going, okay, we're going to rebuild. It's interesting how quickly my mindset from panic to let's get into a solution. And what's, okay, so this is happening for a reason and everything's going to be fine. And we're going to rebuild and we're going to get this thing back on track. No problem. We got up there and I was filled with gratitude. There was nobody there because that first thought of somebody being in there was an emptiness in me that was just, when I found out that they were gone, there was everything's going to be okay. Like at that moment, I realized no matter what happened, we're going to figure this out and it's going to be fine. And then the second thought is when I got up there and I saw all my neighbors that had rallied around, they were all there. They were bringing food to the firemen. And it's like, wow, this thing didn't spread. We're up in the North Georgia mountains. I mean, these are, it's in the forests, these houses in this community, and they're all log cabins. And just by the grace of God, there was no wind that day, and the fire didn't spread to any of the other properties, which filled me with a lot of gratitude. So after that initial like shock, I was like, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to rebuild, and it's going to, it's going to be all right. And so I immediately started getting into kind of solution mode.
Okay, so you're thinking like, all right, so it's burned down, nobody's hurt, you've got insurance on the thing, so that's not part of the tragedy story here. You've got this thing, and you're thinking, well, I'll just rebuild.
I'm like, wait, hold on. Insurance not being part of the tragedy?
Well, in other words, he had insurance.
Yeah, but
not in my case.
Take us through the journey of how you went from I have a awesome property, it's killing it on the rental market, to you know what, it's going to be okay, we'll rebuild. So what parts of that, like with the insurance part, the nobody was hurt part, the mindset part, take us through kind of what's happening all at this time.
I mean, like I said, the real relief came when I found out nobody was hurt. And then everything worked out. So then then you get into kind of the business piece of it. Let's call the insurance company. Let's figure this out. Let's put in the claim. I've never been through an insurance claim that of any magnitude. And we have a lot of properties. I've had minor things here and there. So I was really kind of naive to the process. Now, I did do some due diligence when I bought the property and felt like I got decent insurance, but you don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? Like, what do I need? And I find out that the house is completely covered in Georgia. If you have a total loss due to fire, that the insurance company just pays you out on the total of the policy, which in our case was significant.
Okay. So you've got this money in hand, or you're about to. You find out like, oh, this is a thing. And you're looking at like, okay, we'll just rebuild. How did that unfold?
Well, again, like I am so emotionally connected to this property. It's the first professional STR that I've done, luxury STR that I've done. Like this is part of my identity now. It's more than an investment. And it's, where in the previous, kind of our previous real estate experience, it was clearly investments, right? It's just,
right. It's out there. That's that unit over there. It's like, whatever. But this one's like,
you're making decisions, and there was an emotional attachment to the process and the end result of this particular product for me. And that was actually like an important lesson to go, oh, wait, this is still part of this, there is that component to it, because you do put your heart and your soul when you're building and putting together a property like this, and nuancing on every little detail about designs and really looking at it from a lens of the guest experience and how, they're going to enjoy it, how I would like to enjoy it if I was there, and really going down that rabbit hole. And so there was a connection there. And we were getting that feedback too, which was so it reinforced, oh, wow, all those little things matter. And so when it burnt down, I was like, I have to build it back up. I mean, this is, more than just an investment property for us. But then we started going through the insurance process and the rebuild process. And sure, we could rebuild, but, from a business perspective, right now, it didn't make any sense. I could redeploy all that insurance money into a property, which I did. And I got it open in 2 months. And it's, in the first 3 weeks, I generated almost $100,000 in bookings. So, I deployed that cash and got it open. Where, if I rebuilt the cabin, I would still be, building it. So
Yeah, this is so new. I mean, on the podcast here, this isn't something that happened like 10 years ago to Anthony. Okay, like before we started rolling here, he just got the green light to start the demo on the burnt ashes and piled up timbers and stuff like that. It's like it's that new.
it happened September 10th.
Yeah. So this
So,
is
yeah. And since then, I've been able to acquire another property, set it up, and it's on market. I've got guests showing up in, 20 minutes?
So
okay.
you're saying
So
you're efficient and action oriented, and you're not going to let something hold you down, even as devastating as this.
Well, once you stop, again, like we learned some lessons that first time around, 9 months and sitting on it, and I guess where it gives you the confidence is when you do the homework and you set up the team and you find the right partners. I can't emphasize that enough. This is not something that I did myself. There's no way I could do what I spent that first year learning short-term rentals, and one of the key pieces that I took away is finding the right partners, whether it's insurance people, whether it's finance people, whether it's, revenue management people, it's a team of people that were, design people, setup people, all these great people that I spent a lot of time vetting and allowing me to have the confidence to scale this thing at a really aggressive rate. And the cabin was that proof of concept that I'd built that team. So once I knew that, it's like, wait, now I have this money. Do I put it back into this other thing? Or now, after another period of time that I've had to dive into it, I realize there's markets that have much higher gross revenue potential. I'm not afraid to go out of state anymore. I know how to set up a property. I have a team in place to help me do that. I know how to find local, boots on the ground, all those things that I could not have done with that first luxury property. From the farm, the first property we had, to the cabin, I had to be locally. So once I realized I don't have to be in Dahlonega anymore, I can go anywhere. All of a sudden now all these markets open up. With that same amount of capital, I can double my revenue or, close to it.
that's awesome. One of the things I remember, I was talking with Anthony through this. He sent me a text. It was about, I don't know, 45-second video. And I got this, and it's like this picture of the beautiful cabin, and there's nice music, and all of a sudden it's like this screeching of a record. Or no, it was a dial-up modem. It's kind of a horrible sound. And all of a sudden I'm seeing the place on fire. And then it cuts back to music of the beautiful place, and then there's the fire again. A horrible modem sound. I was like, is this you? I'm writing like, is this you? Is this real? That's what's happening? And so I listened as you're going through this, kind of like oh no, but it's people did not get hurt and I'll rebuild. And then I remember getting a message like, wait, maybe I won't rebuild. And I thought, here is the moment. This is the moment of kind of the opening of epiphanies. And all of a sudden there were a bunch of options where at first it looked like there was just one. Like, well, that's the only thing to do, of course. I want you to unpack that just a little bit when you had that realization, that mindset, like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have just one option.
Well, again, Erik, that comes back to building that team and that community, right? It's one of the reasons I joined the pod. Is now every week we're checking in, we're bouncing things off of each other, we're all comparing notes. And I could reach out to you and say, hey, Erik, like, wait, now that I think about it, like, I don't have to rebuild this thing, right? What do you think? And, I have trusted people that can really like walk, like, of course, yeah, that's absolutely it. Like, reinforce or hold me accountable or challenge me to my, my mindset, right? And all that stuff, I think, is intentional to create that world in which, you can have a mindset of abundance, right? Because I know that I have a team and a network in place that I can navigate anything that comes up. The other night, I said, okay, so now that we've deployed that insurance money somewhere else, how can I, start diving into rebuilding that property with very little capital? And there's roads, there's a path where I can do that, right? I still have insurance money for the lost revenue that's coming in, and I can use that. There's a path to rebuild that. But now I've deployed that money and I'm back on track on my kind of, growth plan that I have. And I wouldn't have had that growth plan in place to make these decisions without the pod, where I'm like, thinking 5 years out, thinking 1 year out, thinking quarterly, creating habits around those and having a plan, right, in place that allows me to move forward with confidence. Yeah, emotionally, I was going to build it right away, instinctively,
Yeah.
right? But when I had time to like the dust to settle and think about it, all those decisions aren't, they don't happen by mistake. They happen because we put a lot of work into cultivating a network and a team of people to bounce these ideas off.
I don't think it's possible for him or me to overstate this, is that the people that you're working with, the people that you're hanging out with, that you can reach out to make such a profound difference. Because no shade on Facebook, but if you just reached out into your Facebook group and it's like, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job, most people would say, what? That's nuts. That's crazy. Why would you quit a good paying job? But we had 2 people out of our pod of about, depends on when it was, 5 or 6 people who quit their jobs. One went in to say, I'm leaving my job. And their employer said, whoa, 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 not so fast. What would it take you to get you to stay? Like, well, I want these impossible things. And the employer's like, all right, we'll work it out. And another did leave, started his own business and is killing it, right? Because most people, and I mean this, is in this, like, stand in the Walmart parking lot and watch people walk by, Target if you're upscale, right? And if you ask people, should I do this scary thing? Most people are going to say, oh, no way. That's dangerous. That's scary. But when you get people around you who say, oh, this can be done. This can be overcome. There's another way. Have you considered this, this, or this? All of a sudden, from the outside, people who do stuff like Anthony is doing look like they're superhuman. Like, how could he do this? How could he have this mindset of abundance? Which I'll admit, when he said, oh, I'm going to do this bigger and better, and it's going to be great, I thought, that's the winning attitude. It really is, because having your prized asset that you've put your heart into, not just your money, right? You've put your heart into this, burn down could be the last thing. It could be like, that's it. Then I'm out. I quit. But for Anthony, and that's why I wanted you so much to be on this podcast, thanks for doing it, is because that's not how you did it. You looked at it and you're like, wait a minute. First, I thought it was rebuilding, which is brave enough, right? And then it went to, wait a minute, I got a bunch of other options. And so I want you to talk about that mindset, what that meant to you to all of a sudden realize, oh no, I could do this, 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 or this. There's just almost no limits. What was that like in your mind?
Well, again, I think a reference back when I first did the first STR, I remember I just did it all myself. I didn't, I didn't learn anything. I didn't, it's like, I'm a hospitality guru. So I'm just going to create this like cool vibe that I have, because I know that my family has gone to this place for years and we have an emotional connection to this. We're going to create that same environment for other people. And then when I set it up and I realized, I got to learn more about this stuff, and I dove into it, the doors opened. There's so many endless possibilities. And so right away, I took away this valuable lesson that, if I'm putting in the work to keep an open mind, all kinds of things flood in. All kinds of stuff flood in. So this idea that I'm constantly trying to learn and like have this, this a mindset of just always learning and getting better. This property that we just did in Bradenton is doing way better than I thought it would ever do. Now we're starting on another property in Scottsdale, and I'm already taking these little things that I missed out on the backyard. It was the first time we did a robust, like, resort style backyard, right? And so now I'm going, gosh, if I had it to do over again, I would tweak it, and it's, seemingly a very successful, launch, right? Nothing to even, but I love being critical. I love analyzing and seeing how I can get a little bit better each time around. And just having that mindset really excites me. It's just like, there's so many and then I start talking about it. I start researching other people that are, 5 years ahead of me and have been down the road of what I'm asking questions now. And I'm going, okay, I'm reaching out to them. Well, what did you do? And how are you doing it this way? And this is where I'm humble enough to just like reach out to people and ask for help, quite frankly. And that is just a skill set I've developed over the last couple of years, quite frankly, because I was a know-it-all. I did it all myself, and this is the way you do it. And that mindset has changed. And I think it started with that first STR when I realized, like, hey, I'm older. And if I really want to jump into this asset class, which I knew I did, I got to get really good at it really fast. I don't have a long runway. I don't have, I'm not 25 years old where I can figure this out over 10, 15, 20 years. Like, I got like a 3-year window to get like accelerate this thing and get really good at it, And so I dove 100% into it. And I took away that I love learning. and it's turned into I'm not afraid to ask for help now.
Yep.
Yeah, and
I mean,
pay for it.
it's
By
literally
the
the
way,
cheat code. We look for that and we're
yeah,
like, wait, how do we, where's the cheat code? What? Literally
it's the
just
only
talk
one.
to people who, yeah. And what's interesting is you think, well, why would they want to talk to me if they're there? Why would they want to? Because someone else turned around and held a hand out and helped them. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And just by asking, there's a huge project I'm working on. And I don't think I've been turned down for one conversation yet. And which is a little bit surprising to where everyone is willing to do that. And then it typically opens so many more doors that go, oh, now I get 10 more people to go talk to. Like, I would much rather learn from their lessons learned than create them myself and have that headache.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's really, where it's like, it's like after that first one, I said, oh, I don't want to spend that much time doing it again. Let's, what is that book? Who Not How, right?
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
I joined the program. I read Who Not How and then The Gap and the Gain, and I joined Strategic Coach and drank the Kool-Aid, and I created a self-managing company. And I'm like, this is amazing. I don't
yeah,
have to do this all myself.
yeah. Well, we did the same thing with our long-term rental portfolio. You know, we were doing all the short-term stuff too. And I had turned it over to a property management company so that I could focus on acquisition and really immersing myself in the short-term rentals. And I found myself micromanaging this property management company. So what am I doing? Why am I paying them all this, property management fees when I can just go and hire my own VA and create my own property management company, and I'll micromanage this person just to manage our portfolio, and there'll be an end to that micromanaging. And I did that I think it was in Italy for the summer, and I set that up, and it's operating, and while we were doing all this other stuff. So it's been really an epiphany to just, be able to embrace that at my age, it's not too late to keep learning stuff and to keep trying to get better and to ask for help and to lean on people that have experience doing what I want to do.
Yes, it can be done. And that's really the heart of why Kristi and I did the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. It was to tell the good and the bad. And we've told plenty of the stories of like, oh, wow, this went wrong. And I have learned so many ways that things can go wrong that I didn't even know about before. But also, I have learned that the truth is that people who are in this for a while are going to have things happen. It's going to be different for everybody, but everybody's going to get something served up. They're going to get that bad hand dealt to them. And it's how they play it that matters. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why Anthony's here, because Anthony, I love it. I'm glad that we're in our accountability group together. It's very beneficial to me. And to our listeners out there, if you're thinking that you're fighting upstream alone, or that everybody else it's all, trips to Costa Rica and watching sunsets with a drink in their hand and no work, no worries, that's just one moment of their life. And that's the part they posted on Instagram. But it's more complicated than that. Some of it's difficult, but with the right people around you, with the right community, and as Anthony shared, with the right attitude towards learning, and grow out of it and grow into new things and exciting things. Anthony, is there any part of this story that I didn't know enough about to ask that you want to share?
Well, I feel like we're just at the beginning of this journey. I mean, I really do. I think we have some pretty ambitious growth plans over this next year. I had that 5-year plan. It looks like we're going to hit that 5-year plan in year 2.5. Now I got to reevaluate this 5-year plan. Like I said, we just launched that new property in Florida. We're closing on a Scottsdale property that's even, bigger, this amenity driven resort style backyard in a different market. And, after that, we're going to have 2 more that we're going to purchase this coming year. And so there's so much excitement to look forward. I'm just so excited to, see where the journey takes me. And I'm, it's going to be fun for sure.
That's
and more
awesome.
importantly, we have, to your point earlier, we've been through a lot of stuff, and it could easily just said, you know what, this isn't for me. But every time I've had a hardship, I've been able to grow immensely from it, to the point where it's like, now it's like, oh, there's really nothing that we can't get through.
Yeah.
And then the long-term benefits of that are just, so profound.
Way less wrinkles and gray hairs when you realize the only thing you can control is your response to what life throws at you. And you go, there's so much less pressure than trying to control it all.
Exactly. So yeah, I can't wait to kind of see where the next couple of years takes us, but it'll be fun.
That's awesome. And on that absolutely positive, amazing note, we're going to wrap this one up. Anthony is an inspiration and a friend to me. as is Kristi. This is why we do what we do and we share what we do, is to help you and understand you're not alone on your journey. If we can go through the things that we're going through, fires, hurricanes, fraud, government shutdown, just you name it. But we're here and we're moving forward. None of us is quitting. We're on to new things. So thank you so much for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, for giving us your time. We hope to give you value and inspiration as we have shared stories of the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate. Just thanks for joining us.